AutoLine After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Mr. Gary V.
How are you, John?
I'm just ready for another show is what I am.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You want one?
Let's hear it.
All right. So last week we had the one where I asked you about the commercial that was more famous than the car. And you got it like that. It was the imported from Detroit commercial.
Oh, yeah. Right.
M&M.
Right.
Chrysler 200.
Yes.
Okay. So this is another pop culture question. Okay.
I'm usually not good at that.
See, you said you were not good at that, and you got the answer right away. So I'm gonna be somewhat vague on this.
Okay.
And our colleagues may have to jump in, but I doubt it. So there was a car that was built by a company the company was established on October 24th, which is today, but it wasn't established today. The car became more famous after the car was long out of production, and it's become a pop culture icon.
Ooh. Okay, so everybody should know we got Paul Lienert here, Joe White here. You got it, Joe?
I'm gonna say the DeLorean.
Oh,
bingo!
Yeah, all right.
So DeLorean was established on October 24th, 1975, and Back to the Future came out 10 years later.
After the company had died,
Long
right? Gone away and died, right?
Yeah. Probably the most famous car that never really did have very well.
Yeah.
Sales-wise.
Yeah.
Arguably, it's like probably one of the most famous cars of the 20th century.
Isn't there still a DeLorean company too? I don't know what
Is
they
there?
do anymore.
There was, and I'm not sure that it's. I think
There was
it might
somebody,
have
I think, that had
liquidated, too.
gotten the rights, the
Yes.
trademark, and then
Yeah.
there was DeLorean Family, and they were fighting over that.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. Get real. I mean, these are people that don't know what they're doing.
So what's the only other stainless steel car around?
Cybertruck.
Cybertruck.
Cybertruck. Yeah.
Yeah.
The DeLorean of the 21st century.
Right.
No.
Not yet.
Except for the fact that the Cybertruck was like one of the biggest selling Q3 electric vehicles out there. I mean,
It's
huge numbers.
Yeah.
Elon's talking $2 million a year now.
Well, let's talk
everybody
Tesla. I
knows
mean,
he's right.
you know, we saw their third quarter earnings, and the numbers look really, really good. The stock was up 20% today. I mean, big jump. And the thing that jumped off the page at me is sales were up 6%, revenue was up 8%. That's good. You know, that's in line with the legacies. But their EBITDA was up 24%. Their net was up 17%. Their free cash flow was up like 233%, some crazy number, which means a year ago it was a bad number.
And costs
went down.
Yeah.
And that's something that you never see from an automaker. If production's going up, if sales are going up, costs always, the cost of operating the business goes up. In fact, they cut their costs. To me, that's really impressive.
That's super ominous for the Detroit companies and for the other legacy companies that are competing with them. I mean, everybody. I was just at a conference Reuters put on in Detroit, and the sort of the challenge from the Chinese automakers and their low cost, their ability to produce vehicles at low cost, electric vehicles at low cost, was kind of like loomed over the whole thing. You forget that Tesla, and first of all, Tesla is kind of a Chinese auto company. Their biggest production factory is in China, and clearly, while Elon has been out doing what he's been doing, his people have been going to school, right, on what the Chinese competitors are doing and learning lessons really fast. So I don't know. I mean, I think and it's a good thing I don't, but if I ran a legacy car company, I would be smashing the glass, hitting the button, and saying, these guys are doing what we're talking about doing, and that's a threat.
Absolutely right. And I mean, they should just swallow their pride and start copying what Tesla's doing. And they're studying it, but I don't see any of them moving on it.
Should the Detroit car companies, and there's only two now, right?
Right.
Should they be borrowing a page from companies like Stellantis and Volkswagen and getting a Chinese car company to climb in bed with? In the old days, they did it for the opposite reason. That was so the Chinese could learn how to build
Where are you going to
cars.
sell them?
I don't know.
And I ask this
Well-
only because, Ford and General Motors have retreated from so many global markets. They're essentially North American companies.
I'm
Absolutely.
talking about partnerships here in North America. Would Donald Trump go for that?
Look, Trump has said he's so anti-China, right? Everything about him is anti-China, but he's made it very clear if they want to build cars in America, he'll welcome them.
Do you
Well, they'll
think
go to
Elon
red
likes
states. The factories will all go to red states. So there's that.
that?
Well, Paul. So your company that you've established, the Felix strategy, you're consulting with companies on things like EVs. I mean, what would you tell them? What would you say?
What can you learn from the Chinese, and how can you learn it?
Well, look, they all have Chinese partners.
Do you think SAIC has been really forthcoming with GM?
SIH,
instance.
it probably has been to a degree, but that's not the company you want to be forthcoming with. You want to have the NIOs, the BYDs, the Li
exactly.
Autos, and the
Yes,
like. That's
yes,
where you want to
exactly.
learn from.
Yeah, Great Wall, all those guys. Yeah.
Not the state-owned enterprises, the SOEs as they call them. You want the Chinese startups. Those are the ones that are moving rocket fast.
The newcomers who can do software-defined vehicles because they're starting from a clean sheet of paper, right?
Right.
They got great battery technology. They know how to do hybrids. They know how to do e-revs. So
right.
Yeah, but I do think, and I mean, I heard a lot about that this week, but I do think that I mean, you see Volkswagen has definitely done this, and Stellantis now doing it too, basically sending a message like, look, we're in another era, as in the 80s, I think, as in the 90s, where, sort of our kind of baseline level of cost is utterly uncompetitive. We have to go to a different number, and I can't tell you what that number is, but it's thousands of dollars a car, right?
That's right.
And so what
Make
Tesla,
it 30%. You better cut costs 30%, or you're not
30%.
going to compete with the
and
Chinese.
so what Tesla has
number.
just done, especially if they sustain it for another quarter or two, and it's not some flash in the pan, then you realize, this company has reset the bar, which was they'd already reset before. The Chinese have reset a bar. Now everybody, globally wants to compete, and eventually the North America. I agree with you about GM and Ford being North American players, but eventually, as you say, BYD will show up here with, and say, how did you like 5,000 jobs? And the answer will be, we love them. Come on down. And then they're inside. And so I do think that, and I heard this, from suppliers, I think everybody realizes, we're in another era where what we thought was acceptable cost and acceptable practice is no longer the case. Now what? So
This is not a new phenomenon. I mean, Tesla has been pretty much taking it to the traditional three, let's call them that, for the last several years. They've been making money hand over fist at Tesla, and the other guys haven't been doing quite as well. It should be no surprise to them, but why are they not reacting with more alacrity?
nobody has a good answer for it that I've seen.
because it's really hard.
Yeah, no, that's exactly.
And again,
it.
for viewers who have not gone and Googled the latest from Volkswagen and Stellantis. I mean, Volkswagen. I pick on Volkswagen just because, they're right. They're going to have this exact discussion with their German unions, and guess what the German unions are saying? And I can't say the two words in German because I don't know German very well, but what words they are.
One starts with an F, and the other starts with a
I think
U.
even in German it starts with an F. And so like right there, they have Volkswagen's got this big problem. They're basically saying, well, we're going to have to close factories in Germany, and they're going to have to go to their suppliers and say, you're going to have to close factories in Germany. Well, that's a really hard discussion to have. Right.
I've heard this argument before from the legacy car companies that were saddled with old ways of doing things, from labor to mechanical processes to suppliers. And the Chinese get all this help from the government, and they've got these supplier networks. I don't know. I think you can learn from a car company like a NIO you mentioned that essentially started from scratch, but they brought a totally different mindset. So I don't know if you need to partner with a company like that or hire people from totally different industries. A lot of these Chinese startups were started by tech guys,
Right.
not auto guys.
No, you've hit the nail on the head, Paul. I think, what we need is in the 1980s, let me put it this way. You had the Harbor Report. You had
Which
Toyota,
is no longer relevant,
which
is
is no longer existent.
Yeah.
And so for those who don't know, the Harbor Report, they went and studied productivity at different assembly plants and compared them and back and forth and whatever. So you could get a lot of info that way. Also, because the Japanese were under so much political pressure back in the 80s. Remember the voluntary restraint agreement with Ronald Reagan and whatnot? Toyota opened its doors. Come on in, come over to Japan and benchmark us. You know, the Center for Automotive Research sent teams over there. Yale and MIT sent
Jim
teams
Womack
over
and
there.
his guys.
And
John
they-
Kravchuk, yeah.
Kravchuk, right, exactly. You know, the machine that changed the world. So Detroit had this great base of info that went, oh my God, we have to adopt, you know, Toyota production system. We've got to do undone cords. We have to do quick die change. We have to have the 5S's and blah, 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 all this stuff. And when they started applying them, what happened? They came roaring back in the 1990s. And so now that's what needs to be done. What needs to be done? Benchmark the best Chinese companies, learn from them.
And it's not just Detroit. It's think about it. Toyota went and did the deep dive in China on what is the basis of their cost advantage. They couldn't figure it out and finally had to get in bed with BYD to build and sell at least a small number of electric vehicles over in China that wouldn't totally die on the market. So if Toyota can't, the machine that changed the world is no longer the machine that changed. China is the machine that changed the world.
Here's the difference. Toyota's playing card, if you will, its ace up its sleeve was manufacturing. It's a Toyota production system. All of the new way is not necessarily manufacturing. You know, Toyota was about manufacturing processes. You know, quick die change, undone cords. You know, in-station inspection, all that stuff. Now it's from a corporate standpoint. How do you organize from a corporate structure so that you eliminate a lot of waste?
Yeah, no, you eliminate a lot of that. I mean, and I mean, again, I mean, this is stuff that probably people are familiar with, but I mean, you have to come back to it. It's like, you know, the Chinese automakers, as they're developing, you know, software-defined vehicles. I mean, basically vehicles that where a lot of the functionality is created by software, not by physical. They have 3 or 4 controllers, not 120, right? And again, this is a familiar story, but it's like, no, really, they have 3 or 4 controllers, not 120. And when they want to do something new, and again, I heard a lot about this week. You know, they can prototype it virtually. I mean, is all this stuff perfect? I'm sure it's not, but you're taking months and steps and complexity out of these systems and out of the cars. And I think that's part of what, I mean, Tesla certainly is doing this. Is part of what they're starting to leverage, I think, is that the comparative simplicity of the product is starting to actually pay dividends. And kind of the time for making that change is past, but it hasn't happened at these other companies.
But it hasn't happened because
but the domestics have all that stuff.
They know about all that.
No, they have all that stuff.
They have the tools.
No, they don't.
They have the tools.
They're not.
They have the tools, but they're not using the tools. They've had the tools for
They don't
longer.
know how to, or
No,
they
I think
don't
they
want
do.
to,
But here's the question. Okay, you mentioned that these car companies basically started from clean sheets, right?
Many of the newer Chinese did, yeah.
And you've got the legacy OEMs, whether they're in Germany or in the US, they've all got factories. They've all got thousands and thousands of people who've been working in those factories, whether those factories are offices or plants, right? And so they have this mindset. These other companies start with the proverbial clean sheet. So they're like, we don't need to worry about all that legacy stuff that's there because we don't have any. So if we were going to do this, and this gets back to, you know, Elon talking about, you know, first principles. Okay, so if you're going to be starting a company to build an automobile, you know, would you make an internal combustion engine?
Heck no.
And so they start thinking that way. But if you have a whole bunch of engine plants, you think to yourself, I've got a whole bunch of engine plants.
Well,
and if you make
all your money from internal combustion vehicles, and you cannot, you know, to date, they have the you know, again, the legacy companies by and large have not figured out how to make money on electric vehicles. I mean, they don't have, you know, they just haven't. And so that's a problem. That's a problem too. I mean, transitioning a broad model. I mean, still, again, I've heard a lot about this week. Stellantis, remember, Stellantis has 14 brands.
Yeah,
so
it's a lot of brands.
It's a lot
too many
complexity and variation to manage, and that's what they're managing.
Yeah,
I mean, if they could shut the whole place down for a year while they went to their sort of future vision, right, which is what 3, maybe 4 architectures with all the sort of consolidation, all this stuff, but that's not what they can't do that.
But I'll give you another example that I just ran into a legacy supplier that said, we did business with a Chinese company and we got the project done in 18 months. And we were stunned. We were like, how did we go so fast? And he said, one of the things is we started to analyze, why did we go so fast with this Chinese company? And it takes years longer to do it with a legacy automaker. And they said, well, one thing is the specs that the Chinese company gave us was 50 pages long. And a legacy automaker for the same product would have given us 4,000 pages.
Crazy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so right off the bat, how long does it take you to go through 50 pages versus 4,000? And so, you start taking weeks and weeks and weeks out of the process of developing a new product. You save a ton of money. You get to the market faster with new technology. You got a competitive edge.
Well, I'm curious, just my first gig was working in a machine shop. Same tolerances? You got to hold the same kind of quality? Are the quality specs the same?
Yeah, but instead of
there's a
trying
big
to
difference
tell you,
between 50
as
and
an
4,000.
automaker, I'm going to tell you everything that you have to do as a supplier. Instead of saying, here's what I need it to do, you go work on it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think and again, I think with the new companies and with Tesla, I think you come back to software, you're dealing with the physical property that has to be tooled and produced by people, or fewer people each day and more machines. But the physical property isn't really as much the issue as it is the software that's being put through it. And software is, I'm not an expert on this at all, not even close, but I mean, software has a sort of a different business model, a different cost model. And again, I mean, you look at Tesla's results, I mean, it's just something, they're not playing the same game that Ford, Volkswagen, and Toyota are playing.
Tesla's totally changed the rules of the game. Mm-hmm. Design, engineering, manufacturing, sales, right off the bat, boom. And I would argue corporate structure. Their corporate structure is different than any of the legacies.
What I think is going to be really challenging for the legacy companies, and starting right now, this quarter. Tesla. So I saw that a couple of days ago before they put out their results. Tesla is now offering 0% financing for the Model 3 and the Model Y. So gone are the days when the cars sell themselves, right? That's out the window. And when I saw this, I said, okay, that's it. He's done for. He's incentivized. He's putting incentives in just like the legacies. Well, actually, and then we see the profit numbers. You realize, he's like Henry Ford the First with the Model T. He can cut the price because he can drop his costs faster than he has to cut the price. So he's playing offense here, and he can afford it.
Right.
Whereas the other guys, not as much.
Right.
Do you guys remember a year and a half ago when Tesla had this big whoop-de-doo show and talked about the unboxed assembly process?
Totally, yeah.
A radical way, a radical rethink, right?
I love it.
And quickly, I wouldn't say copied, but quickly answered by Toyota saying, we're doing something similar.
Correct.
All of a sudden, you don't hear Tesla talk about this anymore, but you're making me wonder.
Well, they did yesterday. They
did
said,
they? Okay.
Yeah, no,
But
they said,
our purpose-built robotaxi product will continue to pursue a revolutionary unboxed manufacturing strategy. But that was it.
That was
making me wonder, are they applying lessons learned from that to Model 3, Model Y, Cybertruck?
Well, they actually said that they're going to continue their plans for new vehicles, including more affordable models, remain on track for the start of production in the first half of 2025. These vehicles will utilize aspects of the next generation platform, as well as aspects of our current platforms.
They didn't say new models, they said more affordable models, so which suggests that they're going to continue to cut the cost of building existing models.
Right.
And by the way, except there's another clause that sort of undercuts that. Okay, so as well as aspects of our current platforms and be able to be produced on the same manufacturing lines as our current vehicle lineup.
Yeah, right.
So there's a separate
So it's not fully unboxed.
Yeah,
not yet.
Yeah.
Right, but is that a bad thing? Is it a bad thing
No,
for
if
them
you're
to
cutting
use
costs.
existing investment? Right,
reduce your capex.
Paul, by the way, I learned in the last 2 weeks, BYD is also working on an unboxed car. So there's at least 3 companies that we know of in the world now working on the unboxed assembly
Absolutely
process.
does not surprise me about BYD. I have heard that the smaller, newer companies like Xpeng are also looking at trying to figure it out on their own.
Oh, that
So-
wouldn't surprise me at all, right? I mean, the Chinese move fast,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and that's that's what the legacy automakers have got to do. And this comes back to what I was talking about. Got to benchmark these guys. How are they doing it?
Yeah.
What are they doing? And to try and explain it a way of, oh, they have access to low cost capital and they pay their workers less and they're using illegal Uyghur labor. Forget all that stuff. You can't control that. You have to go after the ways that they're running their programs.
A new wrinkle I'm just reading about today, I think Benchmark Intelligence, Mineral Intelligence, one that does battery and materials. Simon Moore's posted on LinkedIn today that they have calculated that in the month of October, the average price of a lithium-ion battery cell is like $56. That's unbelievable.
Right.
How long ago were we talking about we'll never get it below $100?
Right.
And it
Yeah,
wasn't that
lithium.
long ago when it was $150.
Yeah, I think that's LFP and
For-
it's cell, not pack, but
Mm,
still.
LFP is lower. It's fallen below $50.
Yeah.
Because lithium
So-
prices have crashed, right?
But why? Why have they crashed?
Because sales are not where the investment
Yeah.
to deliver.
Yeah.
What am I trying to say?
There's
They've
overcapacity-
overinvested and the demand's
there's
not
over-
there.
There's overcapacity in lithium mining, at least temporarily, at least for the short term. Yeah, and that's a whole thing in and of itself. It's but yeah, I mean, shortages of lithium, at least for the moment, appear not to be the problem.
Right. And then today the news breaks. They found this massive lithium deposit in Arkansas.
Who knew?
Like, what did I read? It could supply 9 times the global demand that there will be in 2030.
Problem solved.
Well, but
it's
we
making
still
me
got
think
to
of
worry
Jed
about.
Clampett
we got-
shooting a hole in the ground and white dust comes out instead of oil.
But there's still the other minerals that are involved. We can't overlook.
No, I know, and the
issue of
processing is in
cobalt
China.
No, I think we
That's
can
so-
overlook that because I think this industry is quickly moving away from NMC. Nickel, manganese, cobalt. LFP is the thing going on right now. In fact, who was it today? Was it BYD said they were coming out with a PHEV and EREV battery? CATL did. Thank you, Sean. Off camera there saying using lithium sodium.
Yeah.
So believe me, NMC is still the most efficient. There's still a lot of capacity in that, but this industry is moving away from that
Lithium,
as fast as it
sulfur,
can.
sodium
Yeah.
ion, potassium ion.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to the whole discussion about costs. I mean, I do think that move is like, do you sacrifice a certain amount of range? Yeah, but if the cost is significantly lower and you can start to finally achieve parity, that's going to be the thing that decides it, and it's good enough, right? LFP is probably going to be
It's
good
good
enough from especially if it's charging infrastructure.
And they don't burn. So no fire issues.
Yeah, well, that's helpful.
Yeah.
But getting back to the domestics versus Tesla, I mean, GM came out with its numbers next week, and they look pretty good, and they beat Wall Street estimates for 9 consecutive quarters and revenue for 8 straight quarters.
Yeah,
I'm sitting there in downtown Detroit. I'm like, yep, hitting on all cylinders.
Well, all 8, right? So they're doing well for different reasons, right? And again, I mean, it's good that they're showing good numbers. I was looking at them, and I mean, GM. I mean, it seems like, I mean, they're cutting costs too, but it seems like more of a straightforward kind of, we're making a lot of money on combustion trucks
in North America.
in North America, in the
Full-
U.S.
full
market,
stop.
the best economy in the world. We're doing well with our best and most competitive product, which is good, right? Because there were days not too long ago, GM couldn't say those things, so it's good. It's good. What they're not doing is making money on EVs, and that's and maybe they don't ever have to. Okay, maybe they never have to, but Elon Musk is making. Yeah, I think so too. So Elon Musk is making money on the future product, and GM is making money on a product or a type of product that I think has a long present, but may not have an infinite future.
But then who does?
But look,
Who of us can say that? Right?
so much of this is going to get solved with scale. So what GM says is by the end of this quarter, it will be at a run rate with EVs where it's going to have a variable profit. So if you take out all the fixed costs and just look at labor and parts and all that, they'll make money on those vehicles.
They won't cover the cost of investment.
No.
Okay.
Well,
But-
that'll take years to cover.
Yeah, but that's still better than.
But
where
it's
they
still better
are.
than nothing.
Yeah.
And look, the magic number seems to be 200,000 a year. Once you start selling 200,000 EVs a year, you can really start making money. That's when Tesla turned the corner. As soon as it started selling 50,000 a quarter,
Mhm.
kablamo! It
fills
was
a plant almost.
yeah, right.
But the question is okay, General Motors has, I think, 7 EVs right now.
Mhm.
They're different, right?
And
So,
they can't fill a single plant.
bingo.
Yeah, they're building them at what, 2 or 3 different plants in North America.
Yeah.
Right. And
So
now, the question is, will the market over the next 2 or 3 years move up to fill up those other plants? But remember, everybody made these investments 3 to 4 years ago when everything looked like it was screaming ahead EV-wise.
I don't want this to sound like a China rant, but GM's bragging about, is it the Equinox EV being their lowest priced EV now since the Bolt went away for a while? And is it $30,000 or $35,000
$35.
before you
yeah.
apply,
Right.
whatever subsidy? I mean, there are Chinese companies, many Chinese companies selling EVs for from $4,000 to $15,000 with 100% tariff. That's $30,000, and they can still undercut anything that's being built here. What's the problem? Why are we moving so slowly?
Oh man, where do we start? I mean, number one, you got to realize nobody in China is making money, with 2 exceptions
I heard that.
of the Chinese companies.
Yeah.
Okay, BYD and Li Auto, we know makes money. Everybody else is losing money. They are in a vicious. It's like a piranha feeding frenzy that's going
which
on.
probably explains why
Yeah.
the lithium
And
prices-
they're so afraid that they're going to go out of business. They're doing anything, whatever. They're
Yeah.
throwing everything in the kitchen
Well, and they have
sink at
massive
it.
overcapacity, and they're trying to solve to some degree, for by exporting.
Right.
And that, at least short term, I think that's going to be problematic as well. Europe is saying, no, wait a minute, we're going to put tariffs on these exports. The United States has basically said, don't even send the ships.
Brazil and Mexico are saying the same
And
thing.
Brazil,
now.
so that's the
they're gonna run
Chinese
into problems.
market is challenged.
So, and the other thing, I don't want to make a whole lot of this. Those super cheap cars, 4,000 to 15,000, they don't meet U.S. crash standards. So there's going to be a few $1,000s more of structured cost
Yeah.
that's got to go into them. Then you're going to need a bigger battery to haul that
That's-
extra weight around. And
That's
but-
such a gap, though.
no,
Gee
I totally agree, Paul. But
On the other hand, I just read this today. Do you know how many Chinese companies are making EVs?
it's over 100.
It's up like 135
Yeah.
Yeah,
companies.
it's crazy.
like
It's not
back in
sustainable.
the old days,
It's
right?
not
Yeah.
sustainable. So this is what, as a legacy automaker, you got to worry about is, do I have to worry about a $10,000 BYD Seagull? Maybe BYD, yes, because they're making money, but do I have to worry about Xpeng and NIO and a bunch of the other? They're not making money.
No.
I mean, at some point, they're going to have to, or go out of business.
And so many of these guys they're not just building EVs, they're building hybrids too. And hybrids are popular in China.
Correct.
And E-revs, right?
Right.
So
E-revs are the hot thing right now.
Yeah, a lot of talk about E-revs.
Chevrolet
Right.
Volt, huh?
Yeah,
Right.
Where's the
Bob
Volvo?
Lutz was ahead of his time and he didn't even want to be.
Right, but so the problem, though, this is all a problem, though, for the legacy automakers, because now the dream, I mean, certainly GM, I think, was pretty explicit about this dream. We're going to go all in on EVs. That means we simplify our powertrain choices. We can take out all this capital. We don't have to waste money developing hybrids and high efficiency combustion or this, that, and the other. We can focus our attention on EVs, optimize that, and everything will be great. I mean, I know I'm oversimplifying what the gist was,
But that
but
was
it's
it.
basically
But that was
it.
somewhat fair. Well, that's kind of out the window now. If you're, especially in the U.S. market, it's like we're going to have multiple different types of powertrains to be competitive in the marketplace for a long time.
Right.
So, ouch. Now, how do we manage that?
Right. No, I saw Joe McCabe yesterday from Auto Forecast Solutions, and he had a very interesting slide there. General Motors has canceled 5 EV programs, and 4 have been moved several years beyond when they were supposed to come out.
Yeah.
So, and that was just the GM slide. There's a Ford slide,
Right. Yeah, the Ford slide
other,
look a
same
lot like
thing.
the same thing.
Other stuff
Sure.
canceled or moved back.
Yeah.
It's the reality. Look, everybody thought that at this time, the end of 2024, EV sales would be much higher, that the public would adopt them at a much higher rate. It hasn't happened.
So, Paul, how much of this is a technology push versus a market pull?
Well, I don't see any market pull right now, and I'm not even sure it's a technology push either. There are like some fundamental issues here. The lack of affordable EVs, for instance, at least in the U.S., not an issue in China or that much in Europe, and the infrastructure seems to be crawling along here, outside of Tesla.
Yeah, the
I
infrastructure is a real problem. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I
Paul.
know. Did you ever envision a world where GM and Ford would go to Tesla and ask to be able to?
No,
use
and
their
neither did
chargers?
they.
Well, and I mean, I just say this Iona, this charging venture with seven traditional OEMs, banded together. They just broke ground for their first Iona charging station earlier this month.
They announced that consortium 18 months ago.
And they just broke ground for the first one. And it's kind of iterating or amplifying the point you're making, which is this is taking, it seems to be very slow, very kind of sclerotic, grinding along. Why? I don't know. Honestly, don't have any idea, but it just seems like, this is a problem. I mean, this is supposed to be the part of the solution, but you've built one thing, hardly even, you're not even built one thing in 18 months. Well, why?
Well, it's a chicken or an egg or the nest problem. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that has to get solved.
Well, look, it's a much bigger problem than the auto industry. I picked up another stat the other day. I ran into a national security expert, and he said, starting in the 1950s, the United States built 44 nuclear submarines in 8 years. He said, right now, today, we can build 1.5 a year.
That's why they're advertising on football games.
Yeah, no, we've lost the workforce.
They're advertising nuclear submarines?
No, they need workers.
Yeah, build submarines.
Sorry,
right. Yeah, I mean, they literally are.
But going back to EVs for a second, it's not a lost cause. We're going to sell 1.2 million EVs in the United States this year. 1.2 million. We sold 1.1 million last year. We thought it would be higher this year, but we thought all car sales would be higher this year. That's a pretty good number, actually. 1 million a year, 1 million a year, 1 million. It's going to start to add up. It's still the fastest growing segment in the industry.
And I do think
EVs are.
So, I do think that the demographics of the U.S. market are important here. Ran into someone this week who said there are more people over 80 buying new vehicles than there are people under 30 buying new vehicles. That's
Ruh-roh.
Ruh-roh, no kidding. And then the average age of the new vehicle buyer is something like 55, which shouldn't really be shocking, right? Because when the new vehicle average price is $50,000 plus or minus, you have to be fairly well along in your earning life to afford that. So you're still selling to a lot of people who are baby boomers or older Gen X, and sort of the wave of people who really want electric cars, who are comfortable with all the gadgetroniness of new vehicles. Those people can't even afford a new car, or they're not ready to buy a new car. And so, I mean, I guess I do think, I have to keep reminding myself of this. What's happening in the electric vehicle market is not that it's collapsing; it's just growing more slowly than people thought, as you've said a couple of times, John. And that's important to remember. And there's, the upside is there.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, look, we got to take a quick commercial break. We've got a lot more to talk about. I want to ask you guys about, what if Elon Musk makes it into the White House in the Trump administration? What's that about? But first, the shout out to Bridgestone.
Performance that shines even in the rain. That's what really matters. Bridgestone Potenza tires, improved grip in wet conditions.
Thank you, Bridgestone, for your support of the show. We so much appreciate it. As I said just before the break there, boy, every time I pick up the paper or turn on the radio or the television or get online, there's pictures of Elon Musk and Donald Trump together. And now there's this talk that maybe if Trump gets elected, Musk is going to be
Secretary of Cost Cutting.
Right. Joe, what do you think? Would Trump put him in? I mean, he's talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, everything I say about this has to be premised with I don't really know, right? So, but it does look like Elon Musk, is investing in Trump And I think he, there's several articles, I think in the New York Times and other outlets have talked about this. I mean, it seems fairly clear that he's doing this because he wants to influence Trump's, the Trump administration, a potential Trump administration's approach to various types, maybe a broad swath of regulation, right? And not just in cars, but in space and all the things that, Elon Musk has got fingers in a lot of pies. Would he really become like, and secretary of cost cutting, and like go live in Washington and like show up at some cabinet building? Yeah, Gary's shaking his head. Like, I think not. I think not. And if for no other reason, at some point, his boards of directors, his investors, and his companies that he's actually supposed to be running might have a word. Although not much of what they seem to be care about has affected his behavior up till now. And again, for the point of the whole first half hour of this show, it would be a lot different narrative if Tesla for the third quarter had fallen on its face and produced red ink and all kinds of catastrophe. They did the exact opposite. So in a way, and I'm maybe he said this, I don't know, I didn't listen to his call, but if I'm Elon Musk, you sort of say, I think he has kind of said this, is like, if I'm so terrible, what's wrong? The results are fine. What's wrong with the results? What's not to like? But is he going to have influence in a future? If there is a Trump administration, it sounds like the answer to that is clearly yes.
Will he have influence on Trump's ideas about EVs? He seems to think EVs are a scam.
Well, okay, so
Trump does.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think again, back to the third quarter results. So this is sort of like a form of judo that's too sophisticated for me. But in a way, Elon Musk doesn't have to care about what federal policy on EVs is and whether or not there's a consumer subsidy for EVs, although I'm sure he does. But he doesn't have to, because he's making money the way things are. And the other guys, his competitors, aren't. So if Trump and a Republican Congress, first come into power, and two, say, okay, that's it, no more IRA subsidies, all this crap, we're going to get rid of all of that stuff. We're not going to, spend for that. I think Tesla is situated like, okay, fine, we'll still make a profit. We know how to do it.
That's not judo, that's sumo.
Well, yeah, but the other guys will be out of luck. So I guess that's what's going on. But you know what? If you're a billionaire with businesses that are highly exposed to or dependent upon government policy or government revenue, in the case of SpaceX, there's nothing like having a friend in the White House, right? And so,
couldn't it be as simple as it would do it to get rid of the investigations into FSD?
I think that could be part of it. I guess again, it's hard to know, but he's got so many pieces of his empire that are dependent on the goodwill or the contracts from the federal government. I agree with you. I think FSD would be a part of it, but I think it's probably bigger than that.
SpaceX, he basically, NASA has pretty much outsourced almost everything to SpaceX, right? So if we want to send rockets up.
Yeah, but he still has,
Elon.
He still has hassles with the FAA, hassles with the federal regulators about things that SpaceX is doing. I don't think, they don't seem to be really curtailing SpaceX's activities all that much. But he's been, again, this is, I think, a New York Times article sort of saying he's concerned that, a Democratic administration would kind of clamp down on, and be restrictive in ways that would make it hard for them to, get the Mars mission off the ground. I don't know. But I can't imagine, look, Elon Musk's behavior is for topic for a whole nother show, right? But in a way, it's hard to, you have to kind of keep your eye on the ball with him, and you realize that a lot of what he's doing is probably rational. Again, if you were really insane, would Tesla be doing what they're doing? No. But so, there's the performance, and then there's the pragmatic kind of what's in it for me piece. And I think asking what's in it for him is the thing people have to do.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think, Paul? If Trump gets elected and he says, Elon, come on in, I want you to be part of my cabinet or as a special advisor, does Elon tell him, hey, don't get rid of those EV incentives?
I think Elon's going to be whispering in his ear or shouting in his ear about a whole bunch of things, and that's only part of it, EVs and things like that. Tariffs. Will tariffs hurt Elon or help Elon?
Well, Elon has come out and said publicly months ago that if we don't have tariffs, it's going to the Chinese will wipe out the American auto industry.
Yeah. And yet he's bringing in stuff from China, isn't he?
He
And-
has.
and
I don't know if he still is,
I-
but he certainly
we're-
has.
we're hearing
parts
he's
and
gonna-
components probably, but not cars.
We hear he's going to be bringing in machinery, battery making machinery from China.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't surprise me. Who makes it all?
Well,
The
duh,
Chinese
yeah,
do.
yeah.
I mean, even Ford ran to CATL to say, "Hey, come on, let's build a battery plant here."
Did you read? Speaking of Ford, Jim Farley is driving a Chinese car over
A
here
Xiaomi, right?
and doesn't want to give it up.
Right.
Was it the SU7, the Xiaomi? Yeah.
They didn't identify the
Yeah.
model, but yeah, he's been raving about Xiaomi for some time.
Mhm.
You know, he's an honest guy, maybe too honest to be a CEO. I don't know, but
I think he's sending a message to the Ford Motor Company, like,
he's
"Well,
talked
I'm in a
about it.
competitor, man, and this is a damn
Yeah,
good car."
I think 100%, and that's got to be part of it. It is. I mean, he's been sounding the alarms about the Chinese competition and the capabilities of Chinese automakers for a long time.
Yeah.
And I remember it's like going on almost 2 years ago now, where he came back from, I guess, his first trip to China after the pandemic, and it was like lightning bolts fall off the horse kind of stuff.
Oh,
And
Mike Elias wrote about that.
Mike
in the
Elias has
journal.
written about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, Mike
right.
Elias in the journal has written about that. And I was at an event in that where Farley was at, where I sort of heard it from him. But I think you're right. I mean, driving around in a Chinese vehicle here and saying this thing is amazing is absolutely a message to the troops. It's
Yes.
like,
Paul, is it enough? Is it a strong enough message?
Is what a strong enough
Him
message?
driving around in a Chinese vehicle that would cause the change that we talked about earlier on the show.
It sends a message, but I've also heard Farley talking publicly about how hard it is to change the mindset and the culture of entrenched people in his own company. And GM has talked about that in the past too. But I don't know how quickly you can change things. Remember when GM just a few years back let go a lot of mechanical engineers and brought in a bunch of software engineers, and now all of a sudden they're laying off software
Well,
engineers?
we've talked about this on the show too.
They hired the wrong kind,
Yes.
basically.
Look, if you're a software engineer and you know how to program anti-lock brakes and engine controllers and like that, that's not the software engineer that they need.
No,
It
that
doesn't
isn't a
mean you
software
can
engineer.
design a software-defined architecture,
Correct.
right?
Exactly right.
No.
But going back to Elon and Trump and all that, I've been at a few conferences over the last couple of weeks too, and ran into a couple of policy wonks in Washington, lobbyists, and their feeling was that day one, Trump will eliminate the consumer subsidy, the $7,500 or whatever lesser it is, just boom, clear it out, but will not cut the subsidies for manufacturing.
Interesting.
Because number one, that's jobs. Number two, almost all those battery plants are in red states.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
Those are the IRA
Okay.
subsidies you're
Yeah.
talking about.
All right, but if you cancel this, okay, we saw what happened in Germany when they cut the subsidies. People stopped buying electric
Right,
vehicles
yeah,
in Germany,
right.
right? Okay, so you cut the $7,500, but you continue to pay them to build batteries. Okay, where are those batteries going to go? They're gonna warehouse them somewhere.
So what do you think, Gary? Would an Elon say, Mr. President, I know what you said, but keep the subsidies in place? I mean, even though
I think I would be more aligned with what Joe was talking about, these other things. I think that he's confident enough in the earnings that they're returning are good enough such that he doesn't really need to worry about that. I don't think he really needs to worry about the competition.
He can live without the subsidies, but he's selling enough vehicles so they can benefit.
Well, I mean, so
sales will go down though. You take $7,500 off, you're going to lose buyers.
Maybe, and again, here's numbers I wish I knew. What percentage of Tesla buyers qualify for the subsidy? Because remember, it has an income cap.
That's a good point,
And
Joe.
it has,
That's
so,
a great
and a lot
point.
of the people, so honestly,
Yeah.
again, I mean,
The Cybertruck guys never saw a subsidy.
right, and they're not right. So it may be again that
No,
that
that's a hell of a good
he's
point.
looking. He and his finance people are looking at it. So you know what, we'd have to go stretch to get 10,000 customers a year in the United States. It's not every single customer. So I don't know. I mean, I just think that's something to keep
Yeah,
in mind
no,
is
no,
that these
that-
subsidies,
I like
these
that.
subsidies for him could go away, and it might not have as big an impact on their retail sales.
But I
as
see,
they
but I think they could stay, and it wouldn't bother him either. I mean,
I agree.
he made his bones before there was such a thing as a 75. I mean, people bought Teslas because they wanted Teslas. They didn't care about that additional money.
Yeah.
So if there's a percentage of Teslas that are going with the 7500 or not, I mean, if you want one, you're going to buy one.
So what else is he going to ask Trump for?
I don't know.
He's going to ask Trump for something.
Well, again,
Well,
I mean, I think,
SpaceX, like you were
I think,
saying.
ease up on regulation of SpaceX. I mean, I think Gary, you're not wrong to point out the FSD and other.
Well, robotaxis.
And
Well, I mean, he's not going to have robotaxis unless he can get
right,
FSD.
and get a NHTSA that will put forward robotaxi friendly frameworks that
a national standard.
That
We talked
is
about
friendly
that.
that is friendly to what he wants to do, and frankly would be friendly to what Waymo and other people want, and Cruise and others want to do. So there are lots of things like that. I mean, because those things don't exist well, for a lot of reasons, but in part because powerful Democratic constituencies, like the Teamsters Union and so on, are opposed to automated vehicles. Anyway, I mean, again, this is all entirely speculative, starting with the foundation of none of us knows who's going to win the election.
Okay.
But yes, it's a good question, and I do think that you kind of there's a lot of ways in which I think Elon Musk could be helped by having a friendly White House with an influence on kind of regulatory policy.
What do you think, John?
What? Think of what?
If Musk gets into the White House,
I think if Trump gets elected, Musk is going to be there. He's not going to live in Washington, right? He's too busy. He's not going to be bothered with that. But yeah, I think he will dive in with relish on figuring out ways to cut costs. And I don't mean cutting budgets. I mean doing things much more efficiently. We talked about benchmarking the Chinese, how the legacy should do that. Lutz is the one who sat in this chair right here and said, you should be benching SpaceX. How are they able to do things so quickly? NASA can't get out of its own way, and SpaceX is taking over the NASA launch business as a result of that.
The Walter Isaacson book last year on Musk really opened my eyes to a lot of that. The way he does things, the way his companies do things. Definitely worth reading if you haven't read it.
I haven't read it, so I know.
I mean, he has this. There's this kind of slash and burn sort of aspect to what he does, but it's also, I mean, I think it does get results, and he does have people who know how to translate kind of his what seem like whims or what seem like kind of impulses into action that really works. And I don't know. I mean, I do. I think there's a whole discussion to be had about to what extent is it a good thing for a billion, one or two or three billionaires to kind of oversee the activities of the government. I'm not sure that's quite what the founders intended, but it's just whatever. I mean, we'll see what happens. And I do think that I do think that Musk, if this works for Musk, I think he's going to make the most of it, and because he's got a lot to gain. And look, there's a lot of other well-to-do, extremely wealthy people in Silicon Valley who are behind Trump, and clearly are behind Trump for reasons, right? They want a lighter touch on AI regulation. They want crypto, to be kind of freed from whatever minimal shackles are on crypto. I mean, there's all sorts of like get the government out of the way so we can do all this cool stuff that we, meaning Silicon Valley and tech, kind of the tech powerful, want to do.
What impact would that have on the Detroit auto companies? All the things that Musk might do in Washington?
Well,
net positive effect or a net
$7,500 goes, they're screwed.
It's not a good thing for
that would cripple them financially.
Not a good thing.
It would cripple them because they wouldn't sell EVs, and they've made all this investment. But what I want to do, flip it around. Let's say Harris gets elected. What then happens?
Well, so
Elon Musk doesn't get in.
He does not get in at all.
Right. All right, moving right along.
I think Elon Musk will be fine either way. I mean, I do think maybe the FSD investigation will produce some sort of fruit, but not, whatever. I think they'll be fine. I mean, right, with if Harris gets in, right, it'll be really interesting to see what happens, because then her administration would have to reconcile the tensions among, and I'm going to try to keep this specifically to auto, among constituencies that are not necessarily on the same page, or not necessarily on the same page. So, the UAW is very concerned about electric vehicles for all, for obvious reasons, jobs, most people at the UAW build combustion vehicles. In the state of Michigan, they mostly build combustion large trucks. Are they going to support, oh yeah, sure, let's have California, stop sales of combustion vehicles in 2035 like the state wants to do? I don't think so. So how does she kind of manage that? Her environmental wing wants an end to combustion vehicles. Her UAW wing, that if they win Michigan, she will owe her office to them, does not. And we could go on, but I do think it's not a simple matter of, well, if she wins, it's going to be all green all the time, EVs forever. No, there's constituencies within the Democratic Party that do not see these things the same way.
Right. Here's some great stats that I ran into. So CARB has a ZEV mandate, which is an electric car mandate. It's not about emissions like the EPA standard is. This is about how many electric cars do you have on the road. So about a dozen or so other states have adopted the California standards. Now, California, to its credit, has made big investments in charging, infrastructure, all that kind of stuff. By this time next year, the CARB ZEV mandates 35% of all vehicles sold have got to be electric. California is about 22% right now.
Of the total U.S. market?
California has about 22% of the cars sold in California as of right now are electric.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Okay, next year it's got to be 35%.
50%.
35% next year. New York State, which is a big populous state, part of the ZEV mandate states, 7%. Okay, so next year, ZEV mandate, 35% have got to be electric. 2026, 43%. 2027, 51%. That ain't going to happen. So coming back to a Harris as president discussion, does she allow California to maintain its EPA waiver to mandate the ZEV mandate when the 12 other states following it haven't done anything to make it happen?
That waiver is sitting apparently at EPA or at the White House waiting for action as we speak. And I at the risk of being proven wrong within 24 hours, I will say that I don't think there's going to be action on that before November 5th.
Right.
For exactly that reason. It's like, what,
even after November 5th. I mean, this is a physical impossibility. Physical impossibility.
Although, okay, if you look at what, you said
to meet that standard.
California built out an infrastructure. If you go back to the early days of the Prius, when they said, okay, the HOV lanes can be used by Prii, so we'll give them stickers, and what happened? Sales, right?
And when they keep going.
Well, I mean, and we know how this plays out, but here's my point. The other state, so those mandates are from the California Air Resources Board. Okay, so it's California. There are other states that follow it, but if, New York says, screw it, we can't do it.
Right.
I think that Gavin Newsom would basically say, okay, what is it that we need to do in this state? What carrots can we put out there, like HOV lanes? And I think we can get those numbers in California. Other parts of the country,
yeah,
not a
California
chance.
Might get there for next year. 51% by 2027? I don't see that.
And the thing to remember about California, right, is it's a giant state. And not all of it is Palo Alto or Beverly Hills, right? I mean, you go 50 some miles inland and you're in Pennsylvania without the water. And it's just there are trucks, there's agriculture, there's industry. I mean, so it just, because I drove across California once, it's seared into my mind. It's at least two different nations, probably more if you really were sophisticated about it. But it's at least two different nations. One of them is a red state, and one of them is Beverly Hills and Palo Alto. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they sell a lot of F-150s and Silverados in California.
And not the EV kind.
And not the EV kind.
Yeah. And I even wonder about the EPA mandate, where by 2032 things get really, really tight, really tight. For automakers to be able to meet the emission standards, they need a bunch of electric cars.
We've all been watching this industry for a long time and seen a lot of rules come down and legislation come down, and a lot of it's been modified or changed.
Yeah.
And I think the lobbyists for the auto industry are probably drafting letters, with just a blank at the top, to the next president of the United States, raising all the issues, John, that you've been raising about these very things, saying, okay, welcome, fresh start, about those EPA standards.
Yeah.
So getting back to non-electrical things, I thought it was interesting, Sean Fain showing up at the Trenton engine plant yesterday and talking about a strike against Stellantis. What do you guys think about that?
Well, there's a lot of cheesed off people who either work for Stellantis or do business with Stellantis or used to buy vehicles from them. So that's just one more hornet coming out of the nest right now, it sounds like. But
yeah, I think it again. I mean, I think it's kind of it shows you how difficult it's going to be for certainly Stellantis to restructure itself into a more kind of long-term competitive form, right? I mean, Carlos Tavares is, he's now got a finite limit on his time as CEO of the company. And it seems to me kind of likely that what he's supposed to do between now and the time that he leaves sometime in 2026 is fix the problems that have occurred at Stellantis. And 14 brands, all these factories, it just seems like there's going to be collisions with the union here in the United States already. I think there's going to be collisions in Italy, collisions in France as well. It's going to be, Stellantis, the old Chrysler, now Stellantis, has always been the company that went into the fire first, right? At least in this market. I think history is repeating itself in that way. Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult. I think it's going to be challenging I believe it's going to be challenging for the UAW as well, because, the company has to be able to make money and compete. And, can they sustain these investments that can they really reopen Belvedere? I don't know. It seems like the last thing the company needs is more capacity on top of the capacity they can't fill now.
I thought it was interesting last
It's
month.
not Sean Fain's job to help Carlos Tavares.
Right.
That's the bottom. I just want to make that clear. I mean, I don't blame Sean Fain for what he's doing. He needs to fight that fight, but I think it's going to be a difficult.
Well, I thought it was interesting. The National Dealers Council for Stellantis in the United States last month sent an open letter to Tavares, basically saying, "Hey, you gamed this so we'd have these wonderful results in 2023, and you'd make all kinds of money, but now we're screwed. You need to fix this, which has absolutely nothing to do with electric vehicles. It has to do with the unaffordability of vehicles and getting rid of, popular Jeep brand or models. So you got the dealers on one side and the union on the other side, and they're both saying, hey, we got this problem. No, they're like against him.
Yeah.
I mean, not against each other.
And the employees don't like him either. That's another problem. But, going back to Fain for a minute, part of this, I think, is he's got to keep his name out there if the UAW is really going to be a political force in this country. You notice they haven't tried to organize any other transplant.
Yeah, that seems to have gone dark,
because that loss at Mercedes was a stinging rebuke of the union.
Very difficult.
And the last thing he needs before going into the election is losing another vote at Hyundai or Toyota. Mm-hmm. So he's not even going down that route. He's picking on Stellantis. I don't think they'll strike. And if they do, I think Stellantis will run to the judge, get an injunction, stop that strike cold, because they've got this side letter that says, hey, if market conditions change, we've got the flexibility not to do all this stuff.
Although if you're if by their own admission, Stellantis is sitting on an excess inventory problem in the United States, a couple of weeks of a strike by the UAW might not be the worst thing that ever happened to them, because they're going to have to lose the vehicles anyway. I know that's flippant, but it's probably not too far off from being true.
That goes into their thinking.
I think if you're Stellantis, like, do we really want to strike? Well, you know what? There's no time better than now.
Right. And we don't have to pay them.
Right. But I look, I think it's right. I mean, it's a lot of, it just goes to show the pressure points and in the whole industry, created created by the environment that we've spent the last hour talking about. And Stellantis can't just say, okay, fine, we'll just keep on muddling along. Well, muddling along, what is it, $10 billion negative cash flow?
Right.
That's not okay.
That's a danger.
It's not muddle.
Joe, why did the board stick with Tavares? I mean, he's firing everybody who works for him. Why didn't they fire him?
Well, I mean, God, I wish I could call up John Elkann and ask him. I'd love to know. So I don't really know. I guess from the externals, what I would say, and having watched this kind of thing play out in the past, from the externals, and Paul, you've seen this. I mean, what I would say is probably the board and John Elkann said, we don't have someone who knows this machine better than you. You fix it, right? He is a
who better?
Yeah, he is an effective cost cutter. He has demonstrated that capability.
He let the reins slip right.
Yeah,
out.
I mean, basically, if I were John Elkann, I would just say we're going to be very careful and thoughtful about who we pick to replace you. Meanwhile, please fix this.
Yeah, see, I would look at it otherwise, if I were sitting on the board. And I think what got them into trouble in Auburn Hills was Carlos's fixation on cutting costs. And so here you've got the old Chrysler Group accounts for 40% of the sales, but 60% of the profit. 60%. This is the golden goose. Mm-hmm. And what does he do? He goes in there and starts slashing and burning and moving stuff out overseas, and all with this fixation on cutting costs. And to me, it's like, that's the wrong thing to do. If you've got your most profitable operation, you don't go in and get everybody upset. You buy them ice cream. You say, boy, you guys are doing great. What else can I do to help you here? You don't start, gutting them.
But how much of the issue, too, is holding on or trying to maintain margins for as long as he did?
Right. He got greedy.
I mean, this is cyclical business, particularly in the vehicles that they sell.
Yeah, and
when your inventory is growing and your sales are going down, you got to adjust your plan.
And those inventory problems. I watched Cox Automotive Data. There's other data sources around. I think they all have said the same thing for well over a year, which is those high inventories did not happen yesterday. They didn't happen 3 months ago. They've been there for a long time. Wow. And so that that's taking your eye off the ball. Which and the other thing that I would point out is that, Jeep's like the brand there. I mean, Ram's extremely powerful and makes tons of money, but Jeep is the brand. And I have wondered for a while whether Tavares and the people managing company underneath him thought for too long that Jeep was just fine. Notwithstanding Bronco, notwithstanding every other brand that's out there selling adventure vehicles, and even Honda's tarting up their SUVs and calling them off-road adventure vehicles. I mean, you see a Honda bounding over a dirt road out in the West. Like, what the hell's going on here? Well, everybody has glommed onto that, and it seemed like Jeep was like, oh, we can just charge premium prices for our vehicles as if nothing's happening. And here's Bronco gaining ground.
How long ago was it that you and I sat and listened to Farley laying out the whole Bronco strategy and thinking, oh boy, Jeep better watch out.
Yeah. So anyway, I just feel like the competitive landscape around Jeep changed pretty significantally, and there was not enough of a reaction in terms of pricing, in terms of freshening the product, whatever it might be.
Didn't part of it start with the brand extension, that they started making all kinds of different Jeeps, and then they said
Grand Wagoneer,
we're going to make them in Europe, and we'll have models over there, and we just put the name Jeep on it, and they'll sell themselves just like that. And
I think it's interesting that my 5-year-old grandson recognizes 3 vehicles. He's a car nut, but only 3 that he gets excited about. One is a Cybertruck. Yeah. What a shock.
Yeah.
One is he can point out a Rivian right away because of the headlights. And the other one, I haven't figured this out yet, Bronco. He goes, wow, look, it's Bronco.
Yeah. Well, Broncos, it's not my kind of thing, but
they're distinctive, right?
Distinctive, and it's pretty powerful looking
No,
presence on the street.
Yeah. And that's Farley right there.
Right.
That is best. But.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think for Stellantis, I think they may have discounted the potential for Bronco to eat into their margins or change the competitive situation.
No, I agree. But the problem isn't just a Jeep. That's and he fired all the people that built the Chrysler Group into the most profitable, lost Mark Stewart to Goodyear, and then fired everybody else. And the wheels came off the cart.
Yeah, no, so it'll be. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens in this fourth quarter, because one of the things that Tavares said at the Paris Auto Show, where he was kind of coming out and explaining himself, was, we have an inventory problem, mea culpa. We're going to fix it by the end of the year. Like, oh, good. That means we're going to have a fire sale,
Right.
maybe, or also have a strike, as I said before. But then I was talking with the head of BMW North America, Sebastian Mackinson, and he was saying, I said, are you going to have return to sort of the old school holiday sales? And he's basically said, yeah, well, we've all got inventory. So yes,
Christmas sales,
Christmas
just around
sales
the
could
corner.
be back on. And no, I'm not, I don't know if BMW is going to go crazy, but it sounds like they're going to do something. And Tesla's already doing something with the Y and the 3. So I do think that, that's a difference too compared to the last 3 years of people have inventory. There's no more chip shortage.
How
Markets-
long ago was it during the pandemic when we had all the CEOs saying, "Oh, we love this. Dealers' lots are empty now. We'll never go
Yeah,
back.
never
to
again.
Yep.
Never go back to."
By the way, I cannot tell you how many times I promised never to have another old fashioned, and by God, every Friday night, there it is, right there.
That's great. And that's probably the perfect note to wrap up the show, because we've used up our hour here. But Joe White, so great to have you back here. Paul, awesome to have you. Paul
Thank you.
Liner on the set. Gary, you and I. Oh, and
We had a big show next
We've
week.
got Ralph Gilles from Stellantis coming on board. But we'll talk design,
Yeah.
not all the other problems at the company. But anyway, thanks, you guys.
Great
And I
to
want
be
to
here.
thank all of you for having tuned in.
AutoLine After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.